Are you trying to set yourself up to get paid and need to understand what steps to take? I'm going to go through that in this video. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. So I help people start their nonprofits and raise money for their nonprofits, but I just help you navigate the startup journey, whether you have a nonprofit or for-profit, because I have been exactly in your shoes. And so I want to talk today about payroll, because I know there's a lot of questions about how do I pay myself? So imagine this. You are finally in a situation where you have enough money where you can at least get something as a salary. First of all, congratulations. But I know you probably have a lot of questions about, well, what are the mechanics of it all? Do I just send myself some money? Do I just wire myself money? Do I Zelle myself? Like, what is the process I should take to get paid? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to detail 7 things in this video that you should do to get yourself set up. And some of this is going to be really specific and things you just need to know just to make sure you don't get into any trouble. Now, my disclaimer is I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant, and I'm definitely not your lawyer or accountant. So this is just general information based on my experience, because I had to get set up to be paid for my for-profit business. And if you have questions like this, just navigating the startup journey, then you need to be signed up for my Purpose Profit community. It's a membership community where you get encouragement, you get education, and you get accountability on your startup journey. So I'm linking below the link to sign up for that society today. So before you get too far into this video, I do have a bonus tip for you that you do not want to miss. So make sure you watch to the end of the video, because I'm going to share one thing that you need to know about when you're trying to navigate the payroll process. So here are the 7 things that I would walk through in order to get set up to be paid. The very first thing you need to do is understand, what are you? And so by that, I mean, are you an employee? Are you an independent contractor? I want you to keep in mind, and I'm going to do some caveats here for nonprofits in particular. So when I need to call y'all out, I will. But you need to make sure that you're clear on what is your role and your status with the organization, because how you approach being an employee is different than how you approach being an independent contractor. So those decisions need to be made first. So the IRS has clear criteria for what an employee versus an independent contractor is. Now, a lot of people automatically go for being an independent contractor because they feel like it's simpler. They don't have to pay for like a payroll service, so they don't have to worry about payroll. They think it's really complicated. This is where I was. I thought payroll was so complicated. I was so scared of it. So I was just like, well, everything and everybody needs to be an independent contractor. If I need to pay somebody, they need to just be a contractor. But you really need to go by the rules of the IRS. And I'm linking below a webpage that they have that breaks it down, the 3 categories that you can use to determine which is which. But just make sure you are clear on what it is and you're following the IRS, because if they do get wind of it, there are hefty penalties when you incorrectly assign somebody as either or. So if you're operating with people as independent contractors and they really should be employees based on that criteria, you just don't want to be in that situation. So figure out what your status is, what you are in relation to the business. And if you are a nonprofit, you cannot just hire yourself as the executive director. So your board needs to be a part of this process. The board decides your compensation package and sets this up for you. You cannot pay yourself, just letting you know this, okay? And you need to have checks and balances, so you're not the only one with access to the financing, especially if you're getting paid. So say like you decide that you are an employee. Even within that category, you need to decide the kind of employee you are. Are you an exempt employee or an hourly employee? I'm about to give you a really basic explanation of the two. So exempt is you just get paid the same amount no matter how much you get paid, and hourly you get paid based on the hours you work in the pay period. And if you are certain types of hourly employees, then your organization might be required to pay overtime. So you just need to make sure you know the rules about that and make sure you're following those rules. Also, be clear for yourself. Are you full-time? Are you part-time? What does that mean for your organization? And let me just give you a quick tip. A lot of times when you're starting as a solopreneur, a lot of the decisions you make revolve around you and your needs. But when you're setting up things like payroll or human resources stuff, operate like you have a full staff, because it's very likely if your organization is going to grow, you're going to have to hire somebody else. And so you don't want all your policies or your processes to revolve around your needs, because you may be thinking, well, it's just me. I don't need an employee manual, or I don't need to set up leave, or I don't need certain benefits. But when you begin to hire other people, you absolutely do need that. So operate like you have a staff already when you're setting up. And then if you don't have everything in the beginning, that's okay. But have like goals to be able to get to the point where you have certain things and policies in place. The second thing is you need to figure out how to pay payroll. And this is specifically for people who are employees, but not necessarily, because you also need to know how you're going to pay yourself as an independent contractor, or how you're going to get paid as an independent contractor. So there are many different ways you can process a payment to yourself if you're a solopreneur. But just from my experience, it's been way more helpful and way less stressful to just get a service to do it for you. And you can do it on your own if you're on the for-profit side. If you're on the nonprofit side, then your treasurer or whoever can process that. But it's a lot to maintain. So sometimes people may then get an accountant to do it, or they may get a service they're using to do it, whatever. But you need to decide how that's going to be. And you need to make sure that whoever's paying payroll is putting it in on time, and also has everything set up, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this video, so that the correct taxes are being taken out, and that you're remitting or sending the tax to the state and to the IRS in a timely fashion. This kind of stuff really, really matters, which is why for myself, I was always intimidated by payroll, because I felt like, oh, it's too much. It's too much. I don't want to do this. But I realized in order to grow, I had to be an employee for myself if I was going to be full time. And me finding a payroll processor or payroll service helped ease my fears. And so I personally use Gusto. If you're interested in Gusto, I have a referral link linked below in the description box. And they're pretty seamless and easy to use. They have pretty good customer service. And a lot of people say good things about Gusto, but you can pick many different payroll services. And some people are intimidated because some of the payroll services are really expensive. But just keep in mind that payroll is universal to businesses. So there are payroll companies that serve $1 million businesses. So you want to find the right payroll service for you. You may get intimidated because you're like, oh, it costs so much, but it's because they have a different kind of audience that may not fit you. So find a payroll service that services small, mid-sized, micro businesses, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, whatever you want to call yourself. Make sure you're finding a service that fits your specific needs, because you may be getting a service that has all the bells and whistles, and you don't need the bells and whistles right away. Here's the third thing you want to think about when setting yourself up to get paid: having your paperwork in order. And this applies to not just you as an employee, but other people that you employ. So you want to have, of course, agreements in place around employment. And you want to have a clear expectation of the role and what people do, whether it's just you or other people getting paid. But just at a very basic level, the tax paperwork. If you are an employee, you need to fill out your W-4 form and your I-9 form. Now, there may be other forms you have to fill out. I'm just giving you examples of the big two that you absolutely need to fill out. The W-4 form collects information around taxes and how much money is going to be taken out for taxes. You need to know that because you need to make sure that the IRS has a record of the taxes coming out. And please make sure you set up getting taxes taken out your check if you have classified yourself as an employee. The W-4 form helps you decide, how much is taken out as an employee. You've seen this before. If you've worked for any other company, you should have seen this before. It's where you fill out your number of exemptions, and your I-9 form verifies that you're a U.S. citizen or what kind of U.S. resident you are. And so that information is really required, and you have to verify that you as a company verify the employee, even if you're the employee, that you are a U.S. citizen by looking at the person's ID. So you just need to make sure you know at least those two forms and fill those out in order to get yourself set up. The fourth thing you want to think about is just getting your business set up and enrolled as an employer. So you should have an employer ID number, your EIN, at the federal level. That's pretty easy, and it's free, by the way, to get. So if people are claiming they have to charge you for EIN, they don't. Maybe they'll charge you for their labor to do 5 minutes. but you can do it yourself at the IRS website, but also at the state level. So there are certain state IDs that you need, especially as an employer. And this is not just to register your business. You'll probably have an ID number just to have a registered business, but you also probably need an ID number for paying unemployment tax or with the tax entity, because the organization that sets you up as a business is more than likely separate from the organization that handles taxes. So you need to make sure that you've covered both, that you've set yourself up to be able to send taxes to the state, whatever kind of taxes that they are when you collect tax. But you also need to have just your regular ID number when you're reporting information just about your business and you're likely doing your annual reports or paying some kind of annual fee. So just make sure you're set up in that way, because that's really kind of the first step. Then you start filling out the paperwork and things like that, but you need to be registered. So you need to look at the applications and things like that at the state level, especially because that's different than what the IRS expects of you. The fifth thing I want you to think about is insurance and benefits. Okay, so insurance as a business first. Let's tackle that. More than likely, and this depends on your state, you have to have insurance to have some kind of employee. You probably need to have workman's compensation insurance. Now, you hear insurance and you're probably like, dang, another expense. I don't feel like paying this. But I have found it's really not that expensive. And if it's part of your liability insurance, it's really not much as an add-on. And it's required by the state usually. So you want to have workman's comp insurance, even if it's just you. And remember how I said earlier in this video, you want to operate like you have more employees. This is one of the things you want to think about that with. So workman's comp insurance is one thing, but also you want to think about like the insurance you offer or the benefits you offer. Now, when you're starting out, especially if it's just you, you may not want to offer a full gamut of benefits and have a full package, but you absolutely need to reassess either every quarter or every year what your benefits package looks like, especially when you want to bring other people on, okay? And if you're a nonprofit, your board should be considering what that package looks like, because eventually you want to look like an organization that people want to work for. And you have to treat your people well, right? You have to be able to compensate people well in order to attract talent. And there's nothing wrong with that, with having a good benefits package. People want to be honored and valued where they work, right? So think about what you want to offer. Health insurance is the top of the list. There are different requirements by state. And so you need to think about health insurance. Are you providing just a stipend for them to get their own insurance on the marketplace? That's kind of one of the low level things you can do if you're not ready to pay into a plan, or if you're not eligible for paying into like a business health insurance plan. You may want to think about a business health insurance plan. You want to think about how much you're going to put towards that. Are you going to pay 100% of it? That's cool. But a lot of people can't afford that. Do you want to pay 50%? Like, what is the split? And you just have to remember that the things that you decide for yourself as an individual is what you need to do for all your employees. Okay? No favorites or anything like that just because you're one employee, the CEO, and I'm going to pay 100% of my health insurance, but only 50% of theirs. You got to be equitable across the board. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant, y'all. This is information I have learned along the way. So to verify this information, get counsel. Find a lawyer or an accountant who operates in your state, who can give you the specifics for your state, because all of this is very state specific, and it's state specific for where you're set up and also where your employees live. So you just need to check the rules on that, okay? Even beyond health insurance, you want to think about retirement. One thing that surprised me this year is my state passed a law. Actually, I passed it in 2022 where I have to offer retirement benefits for any employees. So I have to offer it for myself. And I was in the process of getting that formally set up in my business, but it's a requirement and the state has a plan you can pay into. So you want to think about retirement, you want to think about life insurance, things like that, so that you can have an attractive benefits package for your organization. Number 6 is taxes. So I've mentioned taxes all along the way, but it deserves its own section. So if you are an employee especially, you want to pay attention to the types of taxes that you have to pay. So if you have employees, you got to pay payroll tax, and depending on what they fill out on that W-4 form determines how much you can take out. And that's why you need a payroll service, because they can figure that out for you instead of you doing your own calculations. That's just my recommendation. But have a payroll service to do that for you, because you need to submit quarterly reports to the state and to the feds. When I say the feds, I mean the IRS or the federal government. So you need to send that money, because basically what you're doing is you're collecting out of the what you pay them overall. You're taking a portion of what they're supposed to get paid and holding it, right? And then you're sending that to the IRS or sending that to the state. And so basically you're paying their tax for them. You're taking it out of what they're supposed to be paid overall, right? And so if you are not sending that money, then the IRS and the state are going to have issues, honey, and you're going to get letters. They're going to be knocking on your door. So just make sure you have that set up from the very beginning. Do not skip over this part. Your state also may collect like unemployment tax or something like that. You may have to pay into a fund where, like, if someone needs unemployment benefits, like, that's connected in that way. So do your research and make sure you understand what's required of you in terms of taxes, and research this very early on so you don't get into a situation where you have to pay money back or the IRS or the state is knocking on your door. Figuratively, of course. Now, there are all different types of taxes. You need to understand that as a business. Now, there are taxes like sales tax, right? If you sell a product and you collect sales tax, you have to send that money to the state as well, depending on if your state charges sales tax and what their process is. So it's not just payroll tax you need to be thinking about, but because I'm focused on like paying yourself in this video, I'm just focusing on that. But I just want to call out that there are different types of taxes that you also have to send to the state. So just be mindful of that. And the last thing you want to think about is your end of year reporting. So I am recording this in January. This is very timely. So one of the reasons why you collect paperwork on employees when they first get hired, or independent contractors too, is because at the end of the year, you have to report what that person is paid. So you want to get their contact information and their tax information from the get-go, because you got to have it to be able to submit to the IRS and whoever else needs it what happened in that contractual relationship or employee relationship with that person. One of the mistakes I made early on when I was paying independent contractors for a nonprofit is that I didn't consistently collect the W-9. Now, I did not mention the W-9 earlier in this video, but the W-9 is a tax form that you give to your independent contractors. So people who are not employees, but they're still getting paid as an independent contractor, you would give them that form and they fill out their information. They fill out their contact information, their social security number, all of that, because you need it to do your end of year reporting. And what would happen is at the end of the year, I would have the number I paid them, but I wouldn't have like their social security number to attach that number. I wouldn't have like, I had to scramble around for their email addresses to try to find them, to try to, send it in. And you're supposed to report that information to the IRS. Why? Because the IRS wants to know who got paid. And if the IRS knows you're paying people, and there are different ways they can tell that you're paying people, if they know you're paying people, they may come to you and say, hey, you didn't report income that you paid to people, and it may imply that you're paying people under the table. So you just need to be mindful of that. And like I said, collect contact information and like just descriptive information on your employees and contractors from the very beginning. So at the end of the year, you have what you need. So to the basic forms, again, I'm just keeping it real basic, is the 1099 form and the W-2 form. So y'all know about W-2s because as employees, you get your W-2s in typically January, right? So as I'm recording this video, January 31st is the deadline for having all that stuff in for reporting W-2s and sending out W-2s for your employees. So as an employer, as a business, you have to have that information. You have to have the numbers of how much you paid people so you can fill in their W-2s and send them the information, which is another plus for a payroll service because they can do that for you too. So you just want to keep in mind also for independent contractors, you have to do the same thing. You have to fill out the 1099, and there are different types of 1099 forms now. So you have to fill out the 1099 so they have a record of what they were paid so they can do their taxes, because guess what? Because taxes weren't taken out for them, the IRS is going to be knocking on their door asking for taxes based on what they were paid, based on what you paid them. So this is how all this connects. I know It may seem basic for some folks, but this was a learning curve for me. And I'm just going to be honest and open that I didn't know all of this until I had to learn how to pay people. So before I even paid myself, I had the experience of paying other people with a nonprofit that I was helping to launch. So I had to learn all of this on the go, which leads me to the bonus tip that I mentioned in the beginning. Make sure you study your state law and you have a tickler on your calendar to review updated legislation. So just know, like, legislation on taxes, on benefits, on employees changes a lot. It's updated a lot. So what you're required for health insurance or what you're required to pay people for retirement and things like that may be updated and required in law. What you pay people as minimum wage may be updated in law. So you need to know that kind of stuff. There's a new form that the U.S. government wants every business to fill out now. And if you don't fill it out within a year's time, you're going to get charged an exorbitant amount a day as a fee. So if you're not paying attention, first of all, to your mail, and if you're not paying attention to what's happening, legislation, things like that, then you may miss out and have to pay big fees. So put ticklers on your calendar to just check into what's required in your state. You may even want to put a Google alert on different legislation that you need to know about. You need to be on an email list for the IRS or email list for your state, Secretary of State's office, or your payroll service or your accountant is supposed to know this kind of stuff too. So you might want to put ticklers on your calendar to check in with them to make sure that if there's anything you need to do in terms of compliance, you're on top of. So did y'all learn something new in this video? If you did, drop it in the chat or the comments below. And also, don't forget to sign up for my Purpose Profit Society, because that's where you'll learn things like this. I do training every month, very detailed training every month, and we do weekly calls together to keep you on top of this kind of stuff. If you want to sign up for that society, make sure you sign up using the links that I am dropping below. Thank you so much for watching. Also, if you need help, make sure you go to bossonabudget.com and there are resources there for you as well. See you in the next video.